Today on Will Bake for Food, I'm going to show you how to make these classic sourdough English muffins with nooks and crannies included.
Only food for me. Food, food, food.
Welcome back to Will Bake for Food. Today, we're going to make a classic sourdough English muffin. Now, these aren't exactly baked per se, but they are delicious. You can find a list of the instructions and a full list of ingredients on my Will Bake for Food blog. Now, let's get started. So, we need milk, buttermilk, a little bit of honey, flour, and I've added another special ingredient of browned butter, and it just gives this a nutty flavor and it's delicious. So, here we go. The first thing I've done is put a cup of my sourdough starter in my bowl, and just to get it broken up a little bit and a little bit more liquid so that the other ingredients go in it well, I'm just going to pour a little bit of my milk in here and kind of mix it together. This will take just a second. Okay, so now that I've kind of got this a little bit more porridge-like, if you will, I'm going to go ahead and put in my 2 tablespoons of honey. This is what the starter is going to eat overnight while we ferment here. And you kind of want to incorporate everything in as you go along. You want to make sure that your bowl is big enough to hold all the liquid ingredient and have enough space to proof. So I like this large bowl. And also, I have another bowl that has like a well at the bottom, and I don't really like that so much for this application because you like everything to be able to just kind of sink down in. So something with a solid bottom on it works really well. Now, it's almost completely liquid. We can just continue to mix these in. Another tip I have, make sure that you shake up your buttermilk because buttermilk can separate even in the refrigerator when it's cold. So you want to make sure that you shake it up before you measure it out so that you get every bit of it together. Okay, and when I brown this butter, it's lukewarm now, so we're totally fine. You don't want to kill your yeast that's in the sourdough. Now see the bottom, that's all the brown butter bits right there. Baby, that is gold. Put that down in there. And that smells amazing. Now, what do we do with this porridge mixture, basically? Well, we put flour into it. Just sprinkle it over the top and then stir it in about 2 cups at a time. So most of the time when you're making a cake or you're making something of that nature, you have to be very, very precise with the flour mixture. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be putting in more flour and then getting a consistency that we want. So right now, you don't really have to like measure exact cups and things like that. So what you're looking for is just for all 4 cups of your flour to be wet, right? And then this is our first proof. So this is gonna bubble up and get really big and frothy in the morning. So we have to cover this with saran wrap and then cover it with a towel and put it in the oven with the light turned on and just leave it for about 12 hours. And I'll see you in 12 hours.
The first preparation the next morning is to line 2 cookie sheets with parchment paper and then sprinkle a little bit of cornmeal all the way around so that the English dough rounds don't stick while they're proofing. Next thing is to uncover your bowl and gently deflate the dough with a wooden spatula. Also, you want to kind of create a well in the center because the next thing that you're going to do is sprinkle on 2 teaspoons of kosher salt or some big grain salt and then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. The pH of the baking soda and the acidity in the buttermilk is what gives you nooks and crannies. The next thing to do is to gently fold over the dough from the outside of the bowl over top of this sprinkling, just until it's kind of all covered and it's all absorbed. Now you're ready to start adding your flour. Pull out a whole cup from your flour bin and add about half of it on top of the dough. Then proceed to take your spatula and fold the dough in just until all of this flour is a little bit more wet and combined with the dough mixture. Pour the remaining flour from your measured cup out onto the bench and start your kneading process. You want to pour the shaggy mess of a dough out onto the floured surface, and with your bench scraper and your hand, one clean hand and one dirty hand, you want to start to fold over and push the dough. Fold over and push. Fold and push. The generous amount of flour is twofold. You want to incorporate this flour into your dough, as it is still pretty tacky, but the more the flour incorporates, the more elastic it will get and away from that shaggy mess that we first had. Roll your dough around in the flour just to incorporate as much of that flour as you can. After about 4 minutes of my kneading process, you notice that the dough gets much more elastic. I pulled out some extra flour just to cover it so that I can make sure that it doesn't have any tack to it on the outside. You don't want it to be tacky at all. The way that you can tell if it's holding its shape right is when it holds your fingers and doesn't stick to your fingers. You know that your dough is elastic enough and ready to go and time to be rolled out. Reflour your surface and make a little disc out of your dough ball. Take a rolling pin and then start to roll your dough out, rotating it a few times as you go along. You want a pretty even circle, and by the time you're finished, you want the dough to be about a ½ inch thick. Once you have your dough to the perfect thickness, take a cookie cutter or a cup that is about 3 to 4 inches in diameter and place the dough rounds onto your prepared cookie sheets. With the scraps, put them back together. You can knead them a little bit and repeat the process where you roll them into a disc, roll them out, and cut them. The final step in this part of the preparation is to sprinkle a little bit of cornmeal on top of each one of the dough rounds. Then cover with a clean cloth and stick them in the oven for about an hour with the light on so that they can proof. Coat a large pan with about a tablespoon of canola oil and place it over medium-low heat so that it can preheat. Uncovering only a few of your rounds, gingerly lift and then place in your hot pan, being careful not to let them touch as the sides will remain tacky until cooked. Cook for 4 to 5 minutes and then turn over gingerly and repeat with covering and cooking for 4 to 5 more minutes.
Essentially done on both sides. They're both brown pretty well. And what I have here is a meat thermometer, and if you have one of those instant read thermometers, that would probably be better because it takes a minute for this to kind of warm up. But I'm going to check one of the ones on the outside of the pan. Just stick the meat thermometer about middle way through, not all the way through touching the pan, but about middle way through. And what you want to do is hopefully achieve a temperature between 190 and 200 degrees so that you know that the center is done.
Once your muffins are to the right temp and perfectly brown, remove and let cool completely on a wire rack.
Once your English muffins have completely cooled, I'm now going to show you the proper way to open them. So, what you want to do is you take a fork and you go in the side all the way around. And this will help you to have nooks and crannies. Open it up. You can see all those little nooks and crannies in there. Put it in the toaster on the bagel setting. Just toast this side, put a little butter on it, and they are delicious. Thank you all so much for watching We'll Bake for Food. See you next time.